Ed. There's Christophe. I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, September the 12th. If you don't mind. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda? In that case, I'll move the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We have an introduction. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and members of Council. It's my pleasure today to introduce you to our new Fire Chief, Walter Gaylor. Chief Gaylor comes to us from the City of Edmonton's Fire Rescue Service, where he served the department for 30 years. He started as a firefighter and has moved through the ranks as a technical rescue technician, a captain, and a station captain, and most recently as Chief of Logistics and Operations. And we're delighted to have him join our team.
And it's a pleasure to welcome you to the town of Canmore, Chief. I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself or say anything, but...
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to serve the town of Canmore. I'm privileged and thrilled to be here. Really looking forward to joining the community. My family is in the process of moving in, and we're settled into our place, which is lovely, and we're really looking forward to working with a great fire rescue team and moving this schedule forward in a collaborative manner with council, citizens, and the fire rescue services. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's great, and as you know, you're joining a crackerjack team over at the fire hall. Canmore's always been very fortunate with the service and the personnel that we have working for us in fire and rescue, so it's great. You may, before too long, notice that there's very few ties in here, so don't feel obliged to wear a tie to council meetings, but I like to see that, you know, initial impression. It's good.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a bit of a habit.
That's okay.
I'll try to break it.
Yeah. No, welcome to the town of Canmore.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I look forward to working for us.
Looking now to the minutes of the June 13th Committee of the Whole meeting. There are errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? I'm counting that as an in favor. Okay, carried unanimously. Moving on to staff reports, and item D1, the Canmore Rec Center Lifecycle Maintenance Project. Ms. Bain.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. This afternoon, I'm here to provide an update on the Canmore Recreation Center Lifecycle Maintenance Project. On June 20th, a design, then referred to as Option 1, was recommended by administration and approved by Council. Since then, we have worked with the users to hear feedback and incorporate desired changes to optimize the design for all users where possible, while also maintaining the scope, budget, and project schedule. 3 meetings, including open dialogue with the lead designer, as well as one-on-one meetings were held over the summer with the user groups to foster feedback into the design. There was much collaboration and understanding of the various wishes and oftentimes divergent requests from the various users. Although not each and every request was able to be incorporated, we worked together to come up with design changes that struck a balance of the diverse needs of the users. Not only have we improved the operational systems and equipment to provide a continued safe and reliable service in the building, there were also many other enhancements over the current building configuration. There are many things that we can look forward to. There will be more multi-purpose spaces, the enhanced arena viewing areas, a modernized, large, and welcoming lobby, as well as inclusion of a flex change room and larger change rooms in the Alex Caleta arena. I will go through the revised floor plans and highlight some of the various changes that we've done to the design shortly. First, I wanted to comment on a major theme that we heard. One major theme was the importance of having large bookable rooms. The new design increases the number of multi-purpose spaces that are greater than 1,000 square feet from 2 to 4. The design team has also been very conscious to maximize use of space and consider flexibility of the spaces so the spaces can work for a wide variety of activities and allow flexibility of use as the community needs change over time. During the engagement process, there was also constructive feedback received from the users regarding the improvement of user allocation of the multipurpose spaces. The Recreation Department is working on updates to the facility allocation policy, as it is essential to ensure a clear and transparent process to govern the use of those multipurpose spaces. They are also evaluating moving to a round calendar year for community programming to minimize the lag time for confirming the bookings of the multipurpose spaces. Administration is also looking into a holistic approach to bookings to allow spaces to be more available to users. The town is looking at more multipurpose spaces throughout town facilities such as EP, Scout Hall, Union Hall, and others, so that we can manage the bookings and provide more opportunity for multipurpose space throughout the community. I will now highlight some of the design changes that we have resulted from the various feedbacks over the summer in discussions with the users. I'm going to start on level 2, as that's where a majority of the changes have occurred. The first thing you'll notice, kind of this zone here, this large multi-purpose room that we have created. The design was modified to eliminate the corridor and the small meeting room to create a large multi-purpose room that spans the width between the arenas. This was done to create a large area with a concourse feel to greatly improve the arena spectator experience. There's going to be viewing into both arenas. There's currently existing windows into the Thelma Crow Arena in that area, and we are also incorporating windows along the length of the wall so that you have viewing into the Alex Caleda Arena. That zone there. We also redesigned the space as we recognize that there's a great demand for that multi-purpose space. So we ensured when we redesigned this area, we did include doors so that the room can be bookable. We also have discussed that programming will ensure that this multi-purpose room is not available for bookings, so during tournaments, big meets, big arena events, this room would be available to provide that concourse feel with viewing into the arena. We've also included a barrier that you can see in the middle to be able, for flexibility of use with booking that room. And the idea that for a game, you could have setup on one side, you could have stretching on the other side, you could potentially have 2 programmable spaces. Both sides of that would actually be over 1,000 square feet. Or you could also have public viewing into the arenas on one side while you had a program on the other side. You also see that we added barrier-free seating, and I'll just highlight that section there. In that zone, we did ensure to provide access to a public corridor so that there was an inclusive feel, so that if in the case that the multipurpose room was booked, that you have access to the public corridor. We also did ensure that there was ease of access into the multipurpose room so that those individuals, if they are attending an event where that is in a concourse field, they too have direct access back into that multipurpose room. That barrier-free seating is sized for 8 individuals as well as an accomplice, so about 16 individuals total in that area. You will also see a stairwell now in the center of the building. We did, the June 20th design did remove the stairwell to create the space on the level 1 to create larger AK change rooms. The importance of having an inviting stairwell and helping lead the flow of the traffic up to that multipurpose room, particularly in the case of arena viewing experience, it was important to have that open stairwell into that area, so we have incorporated that stairwell back into the design. You'll also see that the elevator is centrally located for those reasons. On the left is the community hall, similar to the last design that we presented. Not many changes, but we have maximized that space and while also creating storage. The good thing about this location here is that it's separated from the bar and arena so that it can be programmed for events while other large arena events are occurring in the building. It's also, there's large vaulted ceilings in that area, as well as a nice wooden flooring throughout, so that area really will be a welcoming, kind of inviting area, and we'll be able to program lots of activities that we currently can't in our configuration in that large community hall. We have left, you'll notice, we have left the town offices in the area just to the east, in that location there. We did evaluate moving them to level 1. For the reason the offices currently are in this space here between the arenas. To create that concourse and to create that enhancements of being able to view that arenas, it necessitated the need to move those offices. We did look at locating them downstairs, and I'll pass that here. So we looked at putting them kind of in this location, as well as this lobby location. What that does, it ends up, by putting the offices down there, it ends up consuming that space. So we would either lose the gymnastics viewing if we were to put it into this space, which isn't functional for the building, will have negative impacts there. We do want to ensure we keep that gymnasium viewing for patrons. We could also look at splitting the offices between this space and that space, but what it does do is it consumes all of that front lobby space. And the way our building works is that the main entrances are on that level 1. The main traffic is going to access the change rooms, the multi-purpose gymnasium, the concession, and various other main amenities are on that level 1. It is important to keep that crush space and that open area for ticket lines and for the function of that building. If the offices were to go down into those 2 locations noted, it does start creating that dark corridor. When you walk in, you would see single-purpose use offices off to the side and not that kind of open, welcoming feel when you walk into the building. Again, we've added that stairwell in the middle with a kind of warm, welcoming invite to help people move the traffic flow up onto that level 2 and into that concourse viewing area for the arenas. In terms of the office space relocation, one of the reasons for that was the consumption of the Lady MacDonald multipurpose space. So to create that multipurpose space that there is great demand in the community for, we have created a multipurpose room on level 1. This room here is about 1,300 square feet. It is centrally located so that it is close to access for various events to support the multipurpose gymnasium or the arenas and tournaments using that lobby space, or other recreational programming or things like training and meetings and that type of thing. We did do much brainstorming regarding relocating and enhancing the walking lane opportunities within the rec center. But after a full review of the options, no other configurations were determined to be feasible or provide a better service than the existing configuration. Therefore, the current configuration will remain. The current location is being enhanced. Rubber sport flooring was installed last week, and this was done under another capital project. Currently, there are no financial impacts that are outside the original capital project budget. A preliminary sequencing and construction schedule was also presented to staff as well as user groups on Thursday, September 17th, along with the design. The preliminary schedule presented was created to minimize user disruptions wherever possible and was developed based on current 2018 bookings and historical data, including arena usage and ice allocation, facility bookings, recreational programming, as well as events. The plan has the construction spanning the 2018 season. The Escalator Arena will be shut down for the summer season, May to August, and we're working on a plan for commissioning the plant so that the Thelma Crow ice remains installed and operational throughout the summer. We're also staggering the work so that at any given time, 2 multi-purpose rooms will be available as much as possible. With the user engagement phase now complete and these design changes incorporated in the floor plan, administration is now focusing attention on the detailed design development, tendering, and construction implementation. The timing of these project elements are critical to allow phased construction to start early in 2018, as just discussed, with the majority of work completed at the start of the fall in time for that peak usage arena season. Any divergence from that schedule has the risk of adding cost to the project and increased disruption to the user groups of the facility. In conclusion, we've appreciated the valuable feedback that we have been able to receive and better the design going forward. We have a great team on board working towards the best outcome for this project. We have committed, experienced, and passionate team from the designers, construction managers, and the community stakeholders, and all of those in between. And although there's lots of work to be done between now and the end of 2018, when we walk into the building in 2018 after substantial completion, we are going to have a design and a layout that really has significant improvements over the current configuration, and that we're all going to be able to enjoy. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. In the written report, you had noted that there would be an information session to present the final design layout to the user groups on the 7th, which was last week. Can you just give us an overview of that meeting and discussions?
Absolutely. Yes, on last Thursday, so September 7th, we presented basically the information that we have here, where with all the design changes, we presented that to Rec Center staff as well as the user groups in the afternoon. There was quite a bit of good discussion there. There was groups present. There was lots of kind of understanding that we have proceeded with, not everything could be incorporated, but we have proceeded with a design that incorporates as much as possible in that design. There's also, yeah.
So I've heard from some of the people associated with various user groups that they felt the redesign was well handled and met a number of the issues that they had identified. I know that not all user groups are quite there. So what sort of feedback did you get from the user groups that were supportive of where we're ending up?
Right, and that is correct. We have had feedback that is supportive, kind of understanding that we have balance that need, particularly with the concourse and the open arena viewing. There was understanding there, and that's where we really saw collaboration between the user groups, kind of really understanding there was a need for that arena viewing experience, but also maintaining the bookable space. So we've seen feedback in regards to that. Improving the more space there as well as improving that viewing arena. You are correct, there is also still user groups that are concerned that we have not been able to incorporate all of the needs that they have brought forward. That being said, we do have certain constraints with the budget on this project and working within our footprint of the building. So that's where we've had to balance those needs and proceed with what we've presented here and been able to present this design that basically balances those needs as much as we possibly can.
In your verbal presentation, you noted the design around the access for mobility challenged
Correct.
people, and could you just go back to that level again? So that's it, just on the left of the top of the bleachers.
Correct.
All right. I'm curious also about the stairwell, the new stairwell. Is that envisioned to be like in appearance the stairwell at Elevation Place, the wide open, welcoming sort of stairwell, or is it a closed stairwell like what we have now at Rec Center?
We haven't got fully into the design details of that at this point, but the idea would be to understand that the reason for incorporating that is to bring the patrons up to level 2, and therefore we would be considering that when we get into the detailed design on that stairwell.
So it could be a design element as opposed to a
Correct.
functional element. Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Bain, for the presentation and all the work that you've done on this. I do appreciate it, and thanks for engagement and the changes that you've made. And I thought we had consensus, you know, this week when I wrote my councillor report. But since then, some of the user groups are coming back with that. And I think when we first started, I was concerned about the engagement, and I think we missed some touch points along the way. And there's still some good considerations being talked about and everything else. Is there still an opportunity to make some changes and talk with some of those user groups? I got a letter this morning from minor hockey, and there's some concerns there. And I've got to say, when I looked at it originally, when all the work went into it, I said, well, I guess that makes sense and it looks good. There's other ideas that I'm looking at now that might make some sense. So I'm hoping that they're still open to some collaboration and some tweaks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments. We are in a situation where we, based on the schedule, we have to proceed with construction schedule for May to get into that area to complete the change rooms and the ice arena. It is essential that we move on at this point. That being said, we can certainly still do collaboration, and if that's the desired outcome in the end, and certain tweaks might be able to be incorporated. Small detailed design elements could certainly be incorporated. We are open to do that, but we do have to be conscious that the design does need to be, the main kind of areas and zones does need to be zipped up and proceed so that we can continue into having construction start in January so that the public washrooms can be done before we get into the arena construction, which is scheduled for May. Otherwise, we will be getting into it. We could certainly do a different construction sequencing, but that will impact the effect on the users.
So if the template is design, you can move things around inside. If there's some changes required without significantly changing the structure of the building, that could still be worked with and incorporated. What's the absolute drop-dead date as far as, you know, what we need to move forward with this? We absolutely need to have a final design.
It looks like Michael Park's coming up here.
Sorry, if I can offer some support and some clarity for your question, Councillor. As Ms. Bain indicated, some of the design elements, minor details, fixtures, finishing, that sort of thing, can still be engaged with the various user groups. However, at this point, we consider the design phase for the primary elements to be complete. There is no intention to engage in further rounds of rediscussing or re-imaging the design. We don't have the budget for that. We're already running behind schedule, and the design work that has been done has had implications for that. So the short answer is, for minor design elements, again, fixtures, finishings, etc., there will be discussion, but there is no intent to move forward with additional facility design unless we get direction from council telling us to do that, in which case we're going to be coming back with a very different cost, construction schedule, budget, and scope request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry I'm so short today. Thank you for your presentation and for following up with Council with regards to this item. I too received a letter this morning from Canmore Minor Hockey. Were they able to attend your meeting last week on the 7th?
They were absolutely invited. They did not attend the September 7th meeting.
Oh, okay. So because I'm wondering if some of the content in their letter might have missed because they weren't able to attend that meeting. They outline in particular some of their concerns. One of them has to do with what His Worship just brought up in terms of the accessible seating, which we see in the design plan has been made available and is quite adequate in my opinion. Could you speak to any work that the group did with regards to improvement of sight lines or viewing at all in the Kaleda as well as the Crow? Right.
In terms of sightlines, we are leaving the bleachers as they were. That would be significant scope and budget cost to do anything in the Alice Kaleda Arena. We are looking at refurbishing the seating in the Alice Kaleda Arena. In terms of viewing into the Alice Kaleda Arena, there will be the windows along that multi-purpose room. So that multi-purpose room will kind of have that Concourse feel. People can kind of stand in that area. We also have the bar in that area. So that will add additional viewing in that area where you can kind of stand in the heated area, both public or during tournaments and games. There will be viewing into the AK Arena through those added windows. In regards to the Thelma Crow Arena, we are updating the bleachers. We also, with that new concourse multi-purpose room, we now have the existing windows which currently are in the meeting rooms and in the office area, those are now available as part of that multi-purpose room. So there will be heated kind of viewing through those windows back into the Thelma Crow Arena.
And so did those design changes come as a result of the time that you spent over the summer? Did any of those tweaks happen, or were they there to begin with?
Some of them have, yes. The multi-purpose, we have tweaked and worked with the groups to really refine that multi-purpose room viewing area kind of feel and that concourse feel. We've worked with and made several changes in the summer, working in iterations to improve that design there. The bleachers and the refurbishments of the seats have always been part of the design.
Gotcha. And then could you speak to me about the difference between what Hockey Alberta requires for their change rooms versus what the building code requires for change room requirements?
So I know our current configurations have 14. We have increased those to 19 in the Alex Caleda Arena. What we have done for building code is we have improved the sight line. So that being said, when you walk through the corridors right now, you can kind of see into the change rooms. So per code, we have made those updates to improve those sight lines so you can't see right into the change rooms.
And is that a building code requirement, or is that an Alberta Hockey or Hockey Alberta?
I believe that's building requirements. And I can't speak to the exact size regulated by minor hockey, but yeah, we have used as much capacity that we can within the current footprint on level 1 to improve the Alex Caleda change rooms as large as we can.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you very kindly.
Just in regards to the table 2 in your written report, the new design notes the community hall. The new community hall is about 1,000 square feet bigger than the old Lady McDonald Hall.
Correct, because we're kind of swapping those locations there.
And remind me, is that new community hall, how flexible is it in regards to possibility of sharing use between user groups or anything like that? Right.
The current, just to add some context, the current hall, kind of this location, the new community hall, we are moving over to here, and that is one of the primary reasons for that change. Not only is it a larger location, it's got the vaulted ceilings, which will allow us to program it for other types of activities, sports activities, as well as hall type of banquets type of activities as well, but also recreational activities. It is also accessible off of the public corridor. So right now where the community hall is, during games and events, the bar kind of consumes that area, so the hall can't be rented to other programs. With the community hall kind of off into that corner of the building, it can now be programmed for other events, which will improve the consistency of booking in that area, while we have other kind of larger events that are in the building as well.
But would it be, would it lend itself to being shared by different user groups at the same time, or is that not likely?
The user groups can certainly always work together. There is no visual barrier or anything in that room to separate it, but.
And I noticed in the new design there's a storage area adjacent to the community hall. Is that storage meant to be for the user groups?
Right, so the main primary storage first would kind of be the tables and the chairs and whatnot, and the remaining storage certainly would be allocated to town facilities as well as the user groups as well.
So that was one thing I heard from, in some of the conversations I heard, was the need to have some storage space for equipment that user groups use regularly, and so that would be available.
Correct. We've looked at both level 1 and level 2, trying to incorporate as much storage as we can in any kind of area that wasn't functional from other multi-purpose areas, so that we can accommodate wherever possible.
Thank you. Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the resizing of the dressing rooms for Alex Caleda, there's no impact to the existing shower facilities? Will they be shrunk or brought down, or are they going to remain essentially the same?
In regards to the Alex Caleda Arena,
yeah.
So we've reconfigured those change rooms. They're going from about 14 to 18 and 19.
Yeah,
they also, each change room has its own toilet and shower facilities in each one.
Excellent, thank you.
met with several representatives from various user groups over the last little while, and part of the discussion was around their need to have certainty around future scheduling of spaces so they could plan forward. And part of our discussion was simply around, well, and you referenced it in your verbal report, the possibility of creating a new facility allocation process similar to the ICE allocation process. So what have you been thinking? What's the rest of management been thinking around what that may look like for future benefit of the user groups?
Right, and I might pass that on to senior administration to add more detail on that. Or Jim, sorry, I didn't see Jim there. I looked for him earlier. Please, Jim.
Mr. Juncker.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. Yeah, about almost a year ago, we started looking at our allocation on facilities a little differently. The policy basically says first priority is town programs. So in the past, we would basically lock off all the spaces. We would book our various classes, and then we'd open up the calendar, whatever was available for other groups. And that made it very difficult for these other groups to schedule over a long-term consistent basis. And it often left them with less desirable times available. So over the last year, we've recognized that groups like quilters are recreation. There is an important part of the recreation programming offered collectively by the town as our Zumba classes or our yoga classes. So we've been approaching that differently. And so the intention is to revise our facility allocation policy to make it more consistent with what we're doing with lanes and with ice and with fields. And we think in that way we can accommodate these groups much more effectively. This fall, as an example, in looking at the needs of line dancing, which is a new program that we're trying to provide space for, and it's growing quite quickly. We've looked at using 209 in Elevation Place as an alternative location for them to use. So trying to take also a little broader spectrum of the facilities available and trying to fit all the pieces that, like a little Tetris game to accommodate everything. So this will likely result in us bringing forward a revised policy to council at some point in the winter.
That's super, thank you.
Thanks.
Now, in regards to that and the other facilities that we own and sometimes we don't manage, like I'm thinking of the Union Hall and Scout Hall, have you thought about how we might be able to?
Yes, I just, Your Worship, left a meeting where we were discussing our taking over the Scout Hall and working with the guides and the scouts who are existing users there, but making it more available to the community. So that's another facility we've just added to our inventory and will soon show up on our website as being available. Haven't quite looked at the Miners Hall yet.
And what's the square footage of the Scout Hall?
I think it's around 1,000, 1,200 square feet.
Yeah. And it typically, I mean, right now, I think it's fair to say it's underutilized. Yes, it's used a couple of times a week aside from the Girl Guides and Boy Scouts, and then it's used for some campovers in the summer months. In the Union Hall, we have an agreement right now with Pine Tree Players. Do you recall when that contract, that agreement is up for renegotiation? Or? No, sorry.
We'll have to get back to you on
that. No, okay. Great, thank you very much. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Bain, for your presentation. I see you've done a lot of work on this floor plan since the last time this was brought forward, so it sounds like there were lots of things incorporated from what you heard from the public. One of the things that I thought I heard loud and clear when this was first presented was the concourse on the second level, looking out over the ice surfaces. So I'm trying to visualize the actual elevation on this. If that wall was removed there's a collapsible wall in there in the multipurpose room, is that correct?
There's a barrier kind of between the rooms to separate it, a visual barrier, but the wall out to the arenas would kind of be window walls.
Right, but is that a collapsible barrier between the two multipurpose rooms?
Yes, that would be, yes.
So if you want to divide it, you can do that with a collapsible barrier, and when you're turning it into a concourse, you can
It would be open, yes.
Okay, so did that treatment of that space more or less achieve that goal of having a concourse for the user groups that were asking for it?
Right, there was a balance struck there. There was kind of the two needs, and the improved arena viewing experience, which between those windows and that heated experience, that does create, as well as making it larger. In previous designs, we kind of had that area smaller. We've made that as large as possible, along with that barrier that you speak of, so that we have multiple programming in there. There is a balance. Instead of making it kind of wide open to the atmosphere, we have still have it enclosed so that it can be programmed for multi-purpose areas as well, because we do understand that that is a major demand and need within the community. So we've developed it in a way that it can function as those two things.
So you achieve the concourse, but you still have the flexibility of
booking
partitioning
that
those
space
rooms
as
off
well.
and using them as program rooms. Is there any access to the seating from the second-story concourse?
Yes, besides the access to the barrier-free seating, there's also two doors there that go down into the stands. So you could kind of come up from the stands and into that multi-purpose room.
Okay. All right, that was something that I thought was also asked for, and you've got it here on the plan. One of the things we've heard recently is the potential to expand the change rooms in the other arena, not the Alex Kalita, but
The Thelma Crow.
Thelma Crow, yes. And that's outside of the footprint of what we're working with right now, is that correct?
Correct.
So do you see any potential in the future if some of those user groups felt that that was something they wanted to add after this project is completed, and maybe do some additional community fundraising? Is there any potential there to increase those spaces outside of the scope of this project, but at a future date?
We could certainly look into that. Those Thelma Crow change rooms are here, which currently kind of back onto the parking spaces, so that would have to be evaluated, but we certainly could look into that for future potential with funding available.
That wouldn't impact this project at the point we're at, because it's obvious that you're trying to fit into a window of completing this project so that the ice surfaces still remain usable next year at the appropriate time, et cetera. So we're kind of on a schedule here, but that doesn't preclude future discussions about
that could be a future, something that we do a few years down the road.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think you've done a really good job of rearranging things, so hopefully that's what you heard from people and you responded to that. So thank you.
Next speaker, Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we go back to the original concepts for the arena in 1982, they talked about an open concept. They talked about adding an arena, having the concourse and everything upstairs. In 2003, we had another consultant work on it with the same thing. And I guess when I look at this, I've heard about the offices upstairs and the open concept. With having the offices upstairs, it doesn't lead to the living level, if everything is upstairs and everything else. And I guess that's some of the feedback that I'm hearing right now. The office is downstairs. There's a column in the way that if you do a multi-purpose room, it's going to be right in the middle of that room, so it creates some conflict. I guess I would ask consideration of those offices to go downstairs and keep things upstairs, because the entranceway and everything else, I don't know how important it is to have that, because you're going to want to draw people upstairs anyways if you did have an open concept. All that work that was done in the past, all the visioning and everything else, I'm just kind of wondering if, and some of the feedback that we're hearing would suggest going that direction. Is that possible to move the offices downstairs? I heard sight lines and everything else were a concern, but would the offices, would you still have a good template if you did that downstairs and you changed the concept?
Like I mentioned before, we did evaluate it, putting it downstairs. What happens is there is impact to the functional flow of level 1 when they do become downstairs. Kind of closes off that area. When you walk in, you'll now have the single-use stuff, which causes kind of the dark corridors, which any kind of modern recreation facility is moving away from. They're kind of looking for that crush space. The opportunity there that will be lost is just kind of that crush space when you have, especially in an arena, when you've got people with their bags sitting, meeting in their coaches and stuff, there is a certain amount of crush space required on that level 1. And because of our configuration where the access to the parking lots is on level 1, it is important that we still remain accommodating having some room on that level 1 for that to occur. As well as the other thing that is unique to our facility is we have the multipurpose gymnasium on level 1. So there is amount of crush space and lobby space associated with the programming for that facility as well that's required. So there is a certain requirement for logistically for that area to function, that we can't completely consume it by closed areas.
Thanks.
Councillor Comfort.
Thank you for your presentation and all your work, Ms. Bain. I have a question about just the life cycle itself. Different spans have been mentioned, 25 years to 40 years. Realistically, what would the lifespan of after the changes be?
Right, kind of any mechanical, we have been talking to the 25-year time frame with that. That being said, things like the roof and large things like that, that is a typical lifespans of those type of components, although there is other components like similar to your housing, various mechanical units that kind of have more 10, 15 years, but the idea with those can be also replaced as is without necessarily doing a holistic, complete renovation like we are doing now. So those can be replaced along the way, and then the 25-year span is kind of time to look at a large amount of those components.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from members of council at this time? Seeing none, thanks very much for the work you've been doing and your report today.
Thank you for your time.
That will move on to item D2, Affordable Services Program. Ms. Brown.
So, good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. A person's place in their community should not be dependent upon their income. Today, we are here to share with you our 5-month pilot review of the Affordable Services Program. The Affordable Services Program streamlines community affordability services to shift supports from being program-centered to being person-centered. As per Council's 2017-18 strategic plan, affordability and the goal of making Canmore a viable community for people of diverse socioeconomic backgrounds was Council's primary goal. Canmore is an expensive community, and as we presented before, Canmore has one of the highest living wages in Canada. Although a significant portion of this is due to our high housing costs, we cannot ignore that there are other variables that make our living wage high, and the impact on an individual's ability to be a part of their community because of this. Canmore's Affordable Services Program strategically aligns with Canmore's Community Social Development Plan, Tools for the Future. As detailed in this plan, the Community Social Development Service Area, which includes FCSS and Bow Valley Parent Link, will reduce barriers and align services based on need. FCSS manages Canmore's Affordable Services Program, And I brought Tara here today to talk about the Affordable Services Program, steps to qualify, and the community impact.
Brilliant. Thank you. So all members of the FCSS team essentially review eligibility and then conduct sort of meetings with every individual who applies for the program. So those eligibility criteria that we look at are the income thresholds. For a single individual, that's $31,200, and for a couple or a family, that is $62,400. And we essentially verify that via people's notice of assessment and their line 150 on their taxes. If they don't have their taxes completed, we have that volunteer income tax program, so we're able to assist folks in getting those done if they're under the income threshold, free of charge. And then we do have folks also in our communities that haven't been in Canada in their previous tax year. So for those folks, we are able to look at their most recent 3 consecutive pay stubs in order to verify what their annual income would be and that they are under the income threshold. We also have a residency eligibility criteria, and so we check that. That comes in the form of a driver's license, often on the income tax financial information, on a lease agreement, something like that. But we want to make sure that we're being responsible with community tax dollars and that we are serving people who live in Canmore. We're good. Prior to launching the program, FCSS really talked a lot about the various products and the things and what we were trying to achieve. And one of the things we really wanted to make sure is that we were very consistent in sharing with people their products, and also that we were creating an opportunity to assess their particular individual situations so that we could also refer them and offer supports outside of the Affordable Services Program. So we created a narrative that we all followed in those first month where we were just, sort of reading and following along, and then watching and asking the questions. So we knew that if somebody had young children, we would refer them to the Parent Link Center. If they didn't, we wouldn't. If food was a challenge for them, we would refer them to food recovery, the food bank, things like that. If they were not struggling with food, we didn't. So we really created this process where in a 20 to 30 minute meeting with every single person who reached the eligibility criteria, we were able to not only offer them the supports within the formal program, but also additional supports outside of that. We do also occasionally run into folks who don't meet the criteria, and we don't want to say, too bad, see you later. So we do also meet with those folks and talk to them about the things that they are eligible, find out what's going on for them, and make sure we make appropriate referrals for those folks to access supports that they need. Oh, I've got my cards in the wrong order. It's made myself a little mess. So after that, people receive an affordability services card. So essentially what we do is we take their photo. On that, we identify whether they're single or whether they're a family. If they're a family, the names of the additional people in their family are also on the card, and we put an expiry date of 1 year. This year, with the March 1st launch, the original clients got a little bit longer than 1 year because we knew we were doing it at the end of a tax season rather than at the beginning. So those people got till June 1st, so that this year we will get the most up-to-date tax information because they'll have completed their 217 by June 1st. Then they take their card and they head out to the partners. I have to give very big kudos to the partners that we have in this program. What they've been able to do is create processes that really allow the clients of the Affordable Services Program anonymity and dignity. They're able to go to Elevation Place, show their card one time, get their membership, and then they have a membership card, and they never have to show their Affordable Services card for a year. Same thing at Arts Place. They have it one time, they're in the system, they receive the discounts every time automatically because in their system, they are identified after one time. And I think that's hugely important for the clients that we see, that there's not that stigma attached of sort of flashing around this card on a regular basis. So, Where am I going? All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on the numerical data and product data. So March 1st to July 31st, those first 5 months, we saw 602 unique individuals, which meant 373 applicants, which meant 373 half-an-hour meetings by the FCSS team. It was pretty onerous. They did an amazing job, I have to say. And that consisted of 98 families with 158 children. Thank you. So with some of the products that we have available, the Roam Transit, local Roam is free. It comes in a 6-month pass, and 198 people accessed the local Roam. Regional Roam is also available at a 50% discount on the 10 ride passes and the monthly passes. We had 24 people buy 10 ride passes and 1 person buy monthly. Pet licensing is free. We had 8 dog license accessed through the Affordable Services Program. With the Volunteer Income Tax Program, which we've been offering for many years, through this program, people who were not aware of that or came without their taxes so they couldn't prove their eligibility, we got 44 new clients. I do think, just a nice little statistic on the side of that I'd also like to share is in that same 5-month period as this program launched, about 100 people in town got their taxes done, which totaled $301,396 brought back into our community in refunds, child tax credits, and guaranteed income supplements. So that group of volunteers who do those taxes makes a huge difference in the what's coming back into our community and the pockets of some of our most needy folks. FCSS workshops, any that have a fee, many of our services are free, but those that don't, we had 22 participants participate in FCSS workshops free of charge. And the other piece that I think was really valuable for us there is we offer financial literacy. And we had a number of folks, I think it was about 3/4 of the participants in financial literacy came to us through the Affordable Services Program. So it was really reaching our goal of trying to build capacity in folks when we know it's a hard place to live and that, you know, there's a lot of things that we can learn in terms of how we manage our money, both our assets that are financial and our assets that are social. And so it was very great to see that. Campership through the rec department, which is 1 week free at summer camp. 33 kids were able to participate with a week free of camp. At Elevation Place, they had 318 memberships. 201 were individual and 31 were for families. Kids Up Front is something that's new to the Bow Valley that happened to just coincide with Affordable Services and made sense. It's an organization in Calgary where people have boxes at games or concert tickets or things that they can't utilize. And so we've had 26 people participate, going to Stampeders games, One Republic concert, you know, Spruce Meadows, things like that. And so we're able to send out to all of the distribution of everybody who have children with the Affordable Services Program, and they just let us know if they would like to access. Arts Place has had 23 individuals register, of which 41 of them are children. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. And, sorry, forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, they have multiple different discounts. So some things are 75, some things are 50, but it's a significantly discounted opportunity at Arts Place. With the library, it's a free library card. 66 cards were given out to Affordable Services folks, only one of which was a child. That being said, children are free at the library already anyway, so only one person showed their card to get it. We had another neat experience where one of the local business owners from the range came over and said to us, "We hear you're doing this program. We'd like to offer a discount at our restaurant." So they offered 20% off all food and non-alcoholic beverages. We don't have numbers available as to what kind of access or uptake they had on it, but it was just very neat that somebody had heard about it and thought, hey, we'd like to be a part of that. We'd like to help out. Pine Tree Players was another organization who approached us. And so at the door, 50% off tickets is available to all folks. At this point, there has been no uptake yet. Relatively new again, but again, they approached us. I think what we find consistently is people are exceptionally grateful to have this offering and to have somebody trying to support their success to stay and live well in our community. And I just want to share just one teeny little story, and I won't get into details because that wouldn't be confidentially sound, but there was a lady who came into our office just a couple of weeks ago. She was a mom of 2, and there was a multitude of things going on in her life that had her emotionally very, very fragile, and it wasn't going to end anytime soon, right? She had a lot of work to do in these situations. And yet she was so thrilled and grateful and wanting to give back. As she's getting her picture taken for her card, she's like, maybe I could be a volunteer driver, right? Like, how can I give back? Can I volunteer for the community? And I think that that's sort of just the epitome of how grateful people are, that what can I do in return to support this, because this is pretty incredible.
Just before you sit down, do you mind, I'm interested in the participation from the range, and they approached you. That's pretty interesting. Have you heard from any other local businesses that might be interested, or is there an intent to reach out to other businesses that might want to take advantage if they knew about the program?
Yes. So Lisa's going to talk about next steps,
okay.
But certainly some of our next steps involves expansion of the products available within the program, both additional supports that are more of a non-profit nature and from a commercial business nature.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, but our thoughts went there. During the pilot, we didn't want to reach out to communities because we just didn't know what to expect yet. But now that we're done the pilot and we've assessed things, now that's going to be one of our next steps. So I'm going to talk to you about the municipal impact of the program. So the municipal impact was that the program actually was able to help different municipal departments reach their business outcomes. So we have Rome's outcome to fill seats. We have FCSS, which is building prevention and resilience in our community, recreation fee assistance with getting our community involved and active, and bylaw services is making sure that our pets are licensed. And there were 2 elements that we really closely monitored, and that was elevation, place, and bylaw, because we wanted to make sure that there was a financial sustainability to this program. We didn't look at Rome because it's still at its infancy, so it was difficult to see how affordable services could actually, how it was impacting the program. But what we did, recreation services, they calculated the revenue gain from new members who became Elevation Place members because of their affordable services program, and even at a discounted membership rate, recreation services calculated that due to the program, $465 of revenue was brought into the town. Bylaw services also commented that affordable services was a way to encourage compliance. So it gave their officers an option when they approached somebody who didn't have a dog license to say, and if there were financial challenges, to say that you can still have a dog license through our affordable services program. So when we put these 2 components, bylaw services and recreation together, we found that the program had a net gain of $25, which isn't a lot, and it's only 5 minutes, or 5 months period, but it's still a net gain. So most of our program partners, they reported that expenses related to the subsidies. Arts Place reported that within the 5-month period, they provided approximately $4,000 in subsidies to residents of Canmore. They also recently expanded the program to the Banff Access card. So we will continue to work with Arts Place and our different community partners to make sure that this program fits within their business plans, because we want them to be financially sustainable as well. Which brings us to our next steps. So our next step is we're going to reach out to community partners, and we're going to fine-tune our eligibility criteria a little bit. A good example is we were accepting individuals who are on a working holiday permit, and a working holiday permit is through International Experiences Canada, and it's for 18 to 35-year-olds to travel within Canada in an affordable way. What we found is that some of our participants were coming from Means, and they were here on vacation, and they weren't meant to stay here. And the working holiday permit is not a means to permanent residency. It's just a means to a holiday. So we are fine-tuning our eligibility to not accept that because we really want to make sure that we're keeping people within the community. We're going to start some longer-term analysis based on our 5-month information and information that we're going to gather now. We're going to look at the gap between the living wage and our income thresholds and start looking at cost-benefit between increasing what it would look like. We're going to look at the demographics, who's accessing our programs. So up until now, we have not asked for age on our application, but that will be added to our application so we can just start kind of getting an idea who in our community needs this program. We're going to look at what does this program do to an individual's living wage. So another side project that we have is recalculating our living wage. We would like to find a way to see if for participants of this program, what specifically is their living wage. And then we want to do a cost-benefit analysis of program expansion, and that includes the administration, stress on administration staff. So the Affordable Services Program has been more popular than we anticipated, and it still continues. We still continue to see 2 applicants per day, 2 approved applicants per day. And while we think that the renewal process will be less intensive than the intake, as we increase our program and we start partnering with more community partners, we're concerned that there will still be a resource and it will still be quite resource intensive. So we will be analyzing options for addressing this resource challenge, but any budget impacts we'll bring to council before implementation. Sorry. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a random question, which is around the volunteer income tax program. So the volunteers that are helping those people, are they all like qualified accountants or something?
They are.
So there's a CRA training, online training that people can take to do that, and so we only do very simple returns. There's across the country, there's very strict criteria of which tax returns they can file and which ones they can't. We are very fortunate here to have at least 2 CGAs within the group of volunteers who do that. And so anything that does get a little bit trickier, we do have 2 CGAs in that group who are very helpful in answering questions and knowing just a little bit more in depth about that. But it's a CRA training program that they are all taking.
I see. So it could be people that don't have a background in accounting but are just interested in helping in that way, and they take some sort of a training.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, thank you for all that good news. That's a really great news story about how effective this program has been in such a short time. I was wondering if the Kids Up Front, is that a local participation group, or is it all out of Calgary?
It's out of Calgary, but they're expanding to the entire Bow Valley.
So I can see some future potential for Bow Valley residents to be able to feed into a system like that if people can't use their tickets to whatever. And I think that would be a great opportunity for people to feed back. You know, I think people want to participate somehow, but giving people options to put back into the system would be really great. Yeah, you also mentioned that you do a group or mass email to the people in the program?
That's right. So when we do get a Kids Upfront opportunity, FCSS will send it out to Affordable Services clients, but Kids Upfront is also for anybody who's going through a challenge of any kind. So they'll also look at who their other clients who are maybe not Affordable Services clients, but still could use a Kids Upfront ticket to brighten their day, brighten their spirits.
Okay. I was just thinking that you were creating a mass mail-out list, so would you be also updating those same people with opportunities like the free food, like the Monday Food and Friends program, and they have that produce. What did they have? The
food recovery.
Food recovery, yeah.
So all of that, we are careful to share with people as they come in to become eligible for the program. But any new partners that come on, we do email out to to people who've been eligible in the past. We have asked permission that we can include people on an email list so that we can give these updates.
Because we seem to have a lot of programs that just spring up and people don't learn about them fast enough to take advantage of them. So it would be really great to be able to tell people what's happening like this week. I mean, I know it takes resources, but it does help the people that need the help, you know, in that immediate window. So thank you very much for all you're doing. Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Councillor Comfort.
Thanks for your presentation and your good work. You know what a big fan I am of FCSS. Visit a lot. So I have a question. What did you find as you were developing the program and implementing it that was unanticipated, that was a surprise? Was there something that you didn't foresee?
I would have to say the sheer numbers. I'll let Tara answer this one as well, but I would have to say the sheer numbers. I mean, we knew that there were people who were struggling in our community, and we knew that there was a gap between the living wage and who made under minimum wage, which is $15 an hour. We knew that there was a significant portion of people even making under $15 an hour, but I think we didn't realize how human that portion was. And these were people with children. These were young people who are coming to the community, and they've been working, and they've been really trying to make their way here. The older, established residents we found who are part of the program. So I think it was just the sheer numbers of it, and how quickly it became popular, the program as well. Tara, do you have anything else you want to add?
I would agree with Lisa, but I think the other thing that surprised me was Elevation Place membership is a really enticing thing for a lot of people, and we heard that from a lot of people. It was like, oh, I've come for my Elevation Place pass, and it was this feeling that somehow they weren't really understanding the scope, and then we'd spend our half an hour with them, and when we drew the numbers back from our partners, that what I found was people only accessed the things that they needed in their life. They, you know, not everybody went for an Elevation Place pass because they had their recreation needs met somewhere else with something else. And, you know, only 200 of the 600 went for the local roam because of whatever fit for their life. And I guess that was a little bit surprising for me, that I think people were very conscious in being appreciative of everything offered to them, but only accessed the stuff that they could really utilize and that they really needed and would really help their lives.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from members of council this time? Seeing none, thanks very much to you and your whole team for what clearly has been a lot of work, probably more than you anticipated when you started the program. But it's been really great to learn about how positive the impact has been in our community. So it's a really important program, and we'll look forward to seeing it continue to roll out. I'm hoping that we'll see other businesses take part, because that's really big. But thanks for all the work you've been doing. That I'll move on to item E1, the councillor updates. And I only have a short verbal report today. It was fairly quiet through much of August and started picking up again towards the end of the month. But I have continued to have ongoing meetings with an ad hoc group that's working with Y2Y to discuss the potential, the possible value, or a process that might be implemented to establish a conservation trust in the Bow Valley. There have been several meetings of the CCHC board to discuss two top-of-mind issues at the Housing Corporation. The first, of course, is the moving forward with the Old Daycare Lands project, and the other is discussing options associated to the Mountain Havens Community Co-op issue that Council is familiar with. And as I noted or referenced during the earlier presentation, I did have several meetings with representatives from several of the user groups regarding the CRC project. One other thing I did that I want to make note of, and I've talked a bit about this in the community already, but 2 weeks ago I was invited for the second or third year in a row to the Settlement Services Newcomers Orientation in Banff. It's at the Banff High School. And this has happened now, I think 3 years running, where new Canadians, students, are oriented in both of our communities, Banff and Canmore, and our school system. And it was so rewarding to be there and see these kids. By and large, they ranged in age from maybe 9 to 16, 17, and there was 40 of the kids that were brand new to Canada within the previous couple of weeks. And there were 40 mentors there that were students that had been newly arrived a year or 2 years ago, and they are helping their new friends and other students learn about living in Canmore and Banff. And there was quite a cross-section of origination, a number of Filipino kids, Cuban, Chinese. There was one boy from the Czech Republic, a number of other countries that had kids there. And the enthusiasm, the sheer glee that they were expressing, and the ability to be living here in Canada. It was pretty, well, it was a bit of an emotional moment for everybody. And I did speak with several of the kids that will be, that live in Canmore and will be going to school here. And by and large, they're registered at OLS. So I was able to reassure them that they'd be joining a really welcoming group of students and staff at the schools here. So that was probably the highlight for me in the last couple of months. Unless there's questions on any of that. We'll look for questions from councillors to Councillor Seeley's report. Councillor Comfort, or McCallum.
Councillor Seeley, are the stats no longer being provided to council from the monthly CCHC reporting, or is that a thing of the past?
No, they are. They are. I rushed my report. I will include it moving forward. I know you've asked about that before.
I think it's just great. It's not for me. It's like for everyone. And I think when you add your stats and the stats from regional housing, they're important statistics to look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Comfort, you had a question?
Not so much a question. I was just going to present my verbal report, very short.
Well, you're kind of jumping the gun here,
sorry.
and we're still on Councillor Seeley.
Oh,
Any other questions for Councillor Seeley?
I had the one about the stats, that was all.
On Councillor Sanford, any questions for Councillor Sanford? Now, Councillor Comfort, you'd like to give a verbal report.
It's very short. I just wanted to say that I was also pleased to attend on your behalf, Your Worship, as Deputy Mayor, the Japanese high school visit. The kids that come for, I believe it's 2 weeks. Same thing. They're so thrilled to be here. When we meet them, they're always late, and they are completely jet lagged, and their eyes are like this. But they end up having wonderful experiences with their homestay families and learning English and all of that, and it's a great asset to the community. And also that I always like being deputy mayor, because I get to step away from it after the 2 months. That's it. I'll defer to Councillor McCallum's report on Bow Valley Regional Housing.
Great. At that point, then, are there any questions from councillors for Councillor McCallum relating to her report? Seeing none, Councillor Krausert, did you have a verbal report?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the only thing that I wanted to add was that under the Transit Commission's work, review and update the bylaws, the operating bylaw. That's now been completed. So the Transit Commission has brand new bylaws. Most of the work was to clean up and clarify things that were already there that you discover over time as you operate, and you realize, well, these two things don't line up, and so you straighten that out, or you word things a little bit better so something's easier to interpret. However, there was at least one significant change, and that was in how the administrative costs are split between the municipal partners. They had been split based on service hours, and under that split, Town of Banff was paying the lion's share. Town of Canmore paid its share, and the ID9 wasn't having to pay because they didn't have service hours. We took a look and realized that two things. One, your service hours produce your bill with regards to covering the cost of the service that benefits your community. The administrative cost is really a sharing of a cost that you would have to have as a whole by yourself if you didn't have a partner. And so we moved towards more of an equal share. It didn't adjust Canmore's share that much, but Town of Banff's share is dropped considerably, and the ID9 is now paying its share for the administrative costs. So that was the biggest change that was implemented.
Interesting. Lastly, then, Councillor Russell, you have a verbal report to present?
Start with the simple ones. Bow Valley Waste Management in July 13th, a number of you were there, but we had the grand opening for the new facility that came to be because of the last one being firebombed. And it was really quite emotional because half the Cook family showed up. The facility's named after Francis Cook, who died out there in an unfortunate accident as an employee of the commission. And the Cook family showed up. The brand new building was able to be shown to everyone, and a couple of really unique things. It's got a seriously well-functioning solar system for that geography. We're putting electricity back into the grid already. It's got a biomass heating system that, at minimum, will save the $5,000 a month propane expense for annual budget, and depending on the proven efficiency when it gets its first run at the cold, will be saving us a pile of money, and also doing multiple duty by consuming the pallet wood that we had no source of finding a recycling program for. So it's been just success, success, success. All that beautiful interior finishing, which, by the way, was complemented by Councillor Sanford's work and along with the administrator in adding the artwork, all the interior paint stuff was, that was all recycled. That comes from, it's called Eco Paint. It cost us very little. And by the time we got the final bills for that building, $340,000 was the out-of-pocket cost. The rest was covered by insurance, covered by some fantastic work from those kind of rough, tough guys out there that turns out really know how to work backhoes and excavating equipment. They saved us a pile of money on earthwork. So just a great, fantastic success and a real tribute to the Bow Valley. It benefits everyone, and hopefully this one's a whole lot more fireproof and there's enough security enhancements that we hope we don't see that one or see that again. Just recently came back from the Alberta Care Conference, and just for anybody who may say, what is Alberta Care? It's Coordinated Action for Recycling Enterprises, where we were treated to some really neat learning. Probably the two highlights were the kid from the Olds College Brewmeister program, who has discovered a mushroom growing process to grow commercial mushrooms because he's a chef, took this in, and he's also taking all the waste products from all the little small craft breweries in the province, using it as a growth medium and selling it again after the fact. This kid will retire by next year. Brilliant stuff, brilliant guy. And then we got a bit of a it wasn't on site. It was a visual presentation from the commercial cannabis facility they're building at Leduc that was quite eye-opening. They've got robotics and things like if you don't expect. I didn't expect to see robotics incorporated into gardening, and what these guys are planning and what they presented was just almost mind-boggling. On the Planning Commission side, thanks to some really good work that Mr. Prevost has brought in, we seem to be trimming up the scheduling, where there's been some work with getting the meetings going a little better, and we're now running a regular schedule rather than doing ad hoc meetings. So we think we're seeing some improvement and some progress. Assessment Review Board, I owe a great debt of thanks to Councillor Sanford and Councillor Krauser. The way the schedules worked out, they picked up all of the hard hearings, and the one that I was scheduled to sit, the day I was scheduled to sit, was canceled. So thanks, I owe you. And last but not least, the highlight, the fun one, which a few of you guys were at, the French School Corn Roast. What a hoot. Those guys, it was the opening of their school year. Corn hot dogs, nice people, and good company, and a nice night. Makes the job easy. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Turning now to the service area reports, item F1. Any questions related to the item A, the CAO's office? I have one for Mr. Fark. The first item in your report is around the start date for the Palliser. Where are we now? There was at one point ribbon cutting scheduled.
Yes, unfortunately that has been delayed, possibly into next week. There remain one or two obstacles to completing the process at this point, mostly related to internal considerations for Northview. We are optimistic that those will resolve this week.
Great, thank you. So we'll see the ribbon cutting scheduled.
Sod turning, yes.
Sod turning,
ribbon cutting's next year.
Yes,
right.
Yes. So, sod turning optimistically next week, potentially the week after.
Great, thank you. And one question for finance, it's not here, but the report about the 39 assessments filed by the same owner, the parking stalls, notes the decision has to be rendered by the ARB or the CRB within 30 days. Do you know if that's happened since the writing of the report?
I don't know.
Are there any questions from the councillors for the first item, A? Seeing none, we'll move to B, municipal services. Wanted to note the statistics that are reported on under Stats Can B1E, knowing that Canmore is significantly above the provincial average for individuals over the age of 65 and significantly below the provincial average for individuals below the age of 15, which isn't surprising. It's just showing hard data on what we're witnessing is by and large the changing nature of our community. Less families and more retirees, I think, is what we can draw from that data. Were you here for that last question, Mr. Fish? No? No, it's okay. I know sometimes you sit out there watching us and come running in when there's a question. Are there other questions from council related to second section, municipal services? I have one under the municipal clerk report, 3B. It notes comprehensive inventory of the corporate records stored in the Civic Center archive room. And some urgency is many of the records will be displaced. So how many records do we have, and where will they be displaced to?
I'm just estimating, but there's about 900 boxes in there, maybe just under, and I think around 350 of them need to move during construction and find a temporary home, and then they'll move back in.
So it's just a temporary displacement?
Yeah, but we needed the inventory so that we wouldn't, we could still find them if they were still, we still look in those boxes, so we wanted to make sure that when they were in their temporary home that we still could locate things that were in the boxes.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Any other questions out of that area or municipal infrastructure? Councillor Russell?
Just wondered if we could get a tiny update on what's happening with the planning department's enforcement. Have we had good, bad, or ugly?
Honest, I didn't ask Councillor Russell to ask that question, but I was hoping that someone might ask a similar question such as that. We are expecting tomorrow to issue stop orders and violation tags for short-term rentals.
Nice.
The penalty is a minimum of $2,500 for a first offense. So we will be issuing a number of those violation tags and stop orders. We've been going back and forth with our lawyers to make sure that we are as defensible as possible around the issuance of those violation tags.
Excellent.
I suspect that is the main piece. If there were any other questions, I'm happy to try and answer those.
I'm just curious how many there might be issued, do you know?
It's going to be somewhat tiered, so we will be starting smaller and then casting the net wider. There's a list of approximately, I'm not sure exactly, I believe it's between 50 and 70 properties that we have files for, and so initially we will be starting smaller in the order of 10 to 15, but very quickly expanding that based on our success. So the key piece here is if people do not wish to receive the $2,500 ticket, we encourage them to cease advertising the property and cease any short-term use of the property for vacation purposes.
Great, thanks for that report. Councillor Comfort, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question about that. Were those complaint-driven, as in neighbors, or were they through the research of the town on VRBO or Airbnb?
Primarily complaint-driven. Some of these files have been open for a number of months. We have a couple that have been open for years, so we will be. So some of those will be sort of the primary focus in the initial piece, as I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
And then to follow up after the stop order, if the activity isn't stopped, then what happens?
If necessary, we will be seeking an injunction from the courts to cease the activity.
And additionally, escalating fines.
Yes, that's right. The minimum first offense fine is $2,500. If the offense continues, I believe $5,000 is the second offense minimum.
It's significant.
It is significant. Somewhat unfortunately, the potential revenue is also significant. Hence, the fines are so high. You know, a number of properties are renting for $500 to $1,000 a night. So, although the fines seem significant, the potential revenue is significant. So, we will be enforcing. I was recently reading an article about tourism in Barcelona, where they have recently increased their enforcement resources for short-term rentals up to 40 officers. Now, obviously, Barcelona is a big city, but there are 40 officers dedicated to short-term rentals.
It's certainly become quite a topic of conversation since we started more intentionally messaging the issue and communicating with people about it. And certainly since we hired the short-term contract position to begin the work. So
yeah, I think awareness has really risen in the community on this issue, and so again, we urge people to comply with the bylaw and not advertise their property for short-term rentals. So the enforcement is really our last resort.
Yeah, one of the positive responses I've heard from a few people is that they didn't know what they were doing wasn't okay, and they're freaking out. Oh my God, you know, are they going to come get me? And so it's the message is being widely distributed, which is good.
Yeah, we've benefited a lot from local media, as well as efforts of the communication department here at the town have really tried to get that message out. Yeah. I think there is, we've been dealing with a number of calls from people who, with questions about what they're doing, if they are legal, if they are able to make themselves legal to operate as a short-term rental. We've had a number of bed and breakfast requests suddenly. More than we had been seeing recently. There are a number of requirements there, and not all properties are able to meet those. But we're having some good discussion in the community. There is an onus, like when you put a sign in the front of your building, you do need a permit for that, so the onus is on the individual to contact the town if there's any doubt about what their activity is, whether that's short-term rental, taking your dog for a walk on a leash or off a leash, or the speed at which you drive through playground zones. We encourage you to find the information. Ask us, we're here to help.
That's good. Councillor Comfort.
Yeah, I just wondered if, are we considering talking to the companies themselves, like VRBO and Airbnb? I know some municipalities have had some success with that approach.
We have had some preliminary conversation. Actually, one of the companies contacted us. Our intent is to, as time permits, later in 2017 or early in 2018, to revisit all of our regulations around tourist homes with the potential of considering a broader legalization opportunity with some controls and management over those short-term rentals. At that time, we would certainly be engaging as many rental platforms as possible to try and involve them in a solution.
And further to that question, with your permission, Your Worship, I just wondered, have we spoken to Whistler at all? Because I know they put in significant changes to their bylaws right at the end of May on how they've progressed through the summer.
I haven't. I was actually going through some notes yesterday and saw that. I haven't followed up with them. They did invest significantly both in their enforcement resources as well as they have a number of areas where there are some short-term rentals allowed. We do actually have some of those as well. For example, Canmore Crossing, the Mountains Reach neighborhood in Silvertip. So there are a few legal options. So I haven't followed up with them on their enforcement piece. A number of other BC communities, Victoria, Vancouver, Fernie, they are all looking at sort of our next step, the legalization and management of short-term rentals, with often a key component being that it be limited to someone's private residence. So as a means to ensure that it stays in a useful housing pool. So it wouldn't necessarily allow people to operate, if we were to follow those same regulations, to allow people to operate an investment property per se. It would have to be rented out in some manner as a full-time residence, and then allow some short-term rentals. But those are details that we'll have to investigate, and that's some of the complexity on regulation. There's a lot of different options there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for that update, Mr. Fish. I just wanted to mention that a few bed and breakfast owners have been really appreciative of the town's enforcement of that, because they feel that that levels the playing field for them, and they feel that they've benefited from that. So thank you. It is being noticed in many different areas of the community, so thanks.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fish? Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question, Councillor.
Yeah, right. I had a question around the transit stops in the engineering services report. notes work will be ongoing into the fall for shelters, lighting, etc. Do we know how many or which shelters where they'll go?
I certainly expect that engineering knows. I do not have a number off the top of my head, but we can get that information for you.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, thanks. And a question, Councillor Comfort?
Oh, I just had a question about earlier in municipal infrastructure. There was item C, under planning and development. There was a human use management review and implementation meeting reviewing 2017 progress and challenges. I just wondered what the date of that meeting was. If you want to check your day timer.
The date of that meeting was, I'll check. It was quite recent. It was Thursday, August 31st, 2:30 p.m. I was there. It couldn't have been me in the library with the rope.
Your alibi is good. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Fish.
Question I raised just out of curiosity at agenda review, but for the sake of the rest of council and the public. Under item J in engineering, talking about the school travel planning and active transportation projects, and it references that there will be modular concrete precast barriers, paint and bollards, etc. So I've noticed there's some new paint lines on the road, which are a little confusing. I haven't driven by in the last few days, but is that part of the work that's underway for school travel planning?
Yes, that is part of the preliminary work that will be completed with the rest of the work that goes with it.
Yeah. So right now, I don't think anybody would understand what the lines are meant to say.
That's entirely possible. We believe it will become self-evident once the remainder of the infrastructure is put in place.
Thank you. Also interesting to note the ultimate cost to the town for the summer program, summer transit pilot that On It from Calgary operated, as there was discussion at the time we approved the $17,000 budget for that was dependent on ridership, and it indicates that about half of that will have been covered by ridership fees, so that's good news. And I understand there's talk from CRP and the Transit Commission perhaps to extend that again in the next year. Any idea? No, you don't know? Michael does.
Yes, so the parties involved in the project consider that it was extremely successful, especially given that it was organized quite late in the season and there was a very limited advertising window. The discussions for expanding the service next year have already started, and they do expect to have an enhanced service in place for next year.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors in regards to the service area reports? Protective services, the 2017 year-to-date statistical report. Are there any questions for clarification there? Seeing none, you have one? Councillor Comfort?
Yeah, since Mr. Nace is here, I just wondered, was there anything that you wanted to highlight in that report?
I was about to get to the RCMP.
Oh, sorry. It's not those stats.
It was protective services.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Keep jumping ahead.
But yes, thanks for being here, Staff Sergeant. Councillor Comfort's question, you're welcome to stand at the podium, but is there anything you wanted to highlight?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Glad you're not making me bylaw.
I didn't mean to demote you.
And we drew a big crowd here today, I see.
Yeah, really. About normal.
You have my written report. At the bottom, basically significantly notes increases that we've had, what we call our detachment flags, which are given by our data keepers in Edmonton. And I had a quick look through some of the spousal assaults as well as the assaults, the person's offenses that are. We have 12 cleared by charge of the 31 in the charges, and the other either unfounded or the complainant wished not to lay charges, and that would be similar of the assaults, where we have 11, and some of those are cross-pollinating, for lack of a better word, between the assaults and spousal assaults. So there's some double stat gathering in that. Any questions about our highlights of our policing, contributing to community safety, our traffic? We're continuing enforcement in various areas, whether it be distracted driving, speeding, seat belts. We also completed 2 provincial road check enforcements. The question was asked of our provincial stats in relation to impaired driving, and they've expedited the process to gather all the stats, but was kind of excluded from that was the impaired enforcement piece. But they're going to catch that up, and they're in the process of a mechanism that will capture everything more clearly and more thoroughly. My expectation is in that.
In your mid-year report, I was interested by particularly the bait vehicle and the bait bicycle program that you engaged in. And it's interesting to note that in the efforts to combat bicycle theft, you deployed a bait bicycle, but I'm understanding that there were no thefts, no hits?
Yeah, there was no hits on the bicycle. It has a unique piece of equipment attached to it that's very covert, and if it moves or is bothered, we can track it. And
so I'm curious, did you use a really nice, like expensive mountain bike? Yep.
Yeah, very much so. We had some contributions from the community in base relationships with some of our members and some of the community businesses. One bike was donated and another was recovered. We sought proper authority from the insurance company, and they donated that to us as well, and that bicycle. So they're pretty nice bikes.
And then would the program be, would every day that bike be located somewhere, or just periodically? Or?
Yeah, it depends on our 2 plainclothes members are very knowledgeable about the process of tracking that, so we try to minimize some of that information to the members, because they can also use their smartphone, and they have to have availability, because if it's disturbed at all, they have to go check it out. And it's been found that even traffic going by could cause enough to send a signal, and we have to go and check it out. So we have to make sure somebody's on shift, somebody's trained to do it, and then they're also freed up to go and just focus on the bike.
It's interesting that you didn't get any theft on that.
Yes, just one of those things. It's luck of the draw. The same thing goes for the bait vehicle. We had all the reported incidents. I looked through. Every vehicle was recovered. They were often found in Calgary. 3 of the vehicles had keys in them, unlocked. 1 was running, so it's not. Didn't take a lot of wizardry to take those vehicles.
So you didn't have to jump in and cross wires or something?
That's right.
Even I could have done that.
Yeah. And of note as well, you saw that there were 3 reported robberies. Those were earlier in the year. 1 was double scored because we only had 2 incidents of robbery, and then both times it was opportunities that the criminal took and then advanced upon either the staff or the clerk and took some money.
Councillor Sanford, you had a question.
Yes, sorry, it takes me a while to get way ahead like some people because I'm scrolling on my screen here, but I had a question for you about the rise in the statistics on the theft of motor vehicles and fraud. There seems to be a basic jump in that area.
Yeah, and that's because the vehicles end up in Calgary. You could determine it to be transitory. Somebody is passing through or they need a vehicle, but I think looking back, when I reviewed 3 of the 4 cases or more that were recovered in Calgary, there was an occupant in the vehicle, so they were charged in Calgary with the possession of stolen property. They were also involved in another crime within that city. So it seems the trend is that a theft happens in Calgary, they might move out here, dump a vehicle, jump in another vehicle, go back into Calgary and do some more. So it could be passing through. It's hard to say how that's all happening.
So do you think, is vehicle theft and fraud linked somehow? Or?
No, the fraud piece, which I looked at for last year, there was a lot of it was your CRA frauds, the take on the Nigerian letter, which you'll see on the internet. Some people will come in and advise us of that, and if they haven't had, and for the most part, most people have not been a victim of those frauds, they're simply reporting it for information. We'll then offer them or to advice to report to the fraud line at the national level. So if there is a trend or we do have a suspect, that can be investigated. Oftentimes it's out of Canmore, it's either on a national or international level that those mail-outs and contacts will come from.
That's good to know. So it's reported incidents, but not necessarily people being taken advantage of.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Just on the vehicle recoveries, were those are independent? They're not all there's not a prosecution link to all of those?
There would be, but not at our end. Because we couldn't prove that that person stole the vehicle, but we can definitely prove that they're in possession of it. So the possession charge would stem from the location of recovery.
Oh, excellent. That's good news. Thanks.
One other thing that I was curious about in your report on the enhanced summer shifts, it notes that you have 38 more shifts remaining to the program end, and that's current as of?
Yep, as of I think the Labor Day weekend, and we might have one more shift for weekends coming up for the middle of September, and then we'll save some for the Christmas season, for road checks and whatnot that will come in the later part of the Christmas season. But we have utilized, or most of that has been used up.
So those enhanced summer shifts are, I've seen your officers.
Yeah. So what we decided to do something a little different this year was we wanted that our members would come in, they would be fresh and crisp and focused for 4 hours, and they would go out and do concentrated foot patrols. Those that are trained in bicycle patrols would be out on the bicycle. If we had anything else on the go, we could also utilize for surveillance. And then also we did some either roving or static road checks of either motor vehicle infractions or impaired driving. One of the things that we wanted to focus on was we had concentrated areas of complaints, so we would then have the enhanced patrols go out and do those traffic complaints.
I've certainly noticed the officers on Main Street through the summer, which has been pretty good to see. In that circumstance, when they're patrolling, like on Main Street, if there's a blatant occurrence of people riding their bicycle on the sidewalk or something, then I assume the officers would interrupt that activity.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're doing a lot. They're doing more than showing their faces. They're actively enforcing.
Yes,
laws.
engaging in either the dialogue of education, or if they know they're repeat offenders and ongoing, or we could issue a ticket as well.
Yeah. And by and large, has there been response from the downtown business people, or?
A lot of it's positive. Any feedback I get from anybody in the public, it's very positive.
I would think.
Yep.
That's great.
One of the things not in my report, because I just learned of it prior to this, was we have a crime severity index, which is measured on the violence or nature of crime. Canmore in the municipalities is the lowest in the province of Alberta.
There you go. Well, that's good news.
So I was just going to verify what I heard. So you're saying that we're one of the lowest communities for
the lowest, he said.
The lowest
The
community?
lowest, yeah.
For violent crime.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Interesting. Well, if there are no other questions for the staff sergeant, thank you very much for being here again. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us and answer questions.
Thank you.
Turning now to the council resolution action list, outstanding resolutions. Are there questions or comments on that? Seeing none, looking then to the bulletin from the Bow Valley Regional Housing. Any questions on that report? I guess I just wanted, I mean, I think it's clear in here, but it looks like it'll be early November now before we're moving residents in. And was that move in, I mean, in a nutshell, what was it that caused that lengthy delay?
52 pages of deficiencies?
52 pages of deficiencies.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yep. And I would probably venture to say that the relationship between the province and the contractor isn't outstanding anymore now that there's been charges laid, so things begin to slow down a bit.
I wondered if that was the cause. Thank you. Did you have something, Mr. Fart?
Just an answer to the earlier council question, the number of shelters that are being put in place for transit. There are 2 new shelters being built, one in front of the Holiday Inn and the other on the Benchlands overpass on the south side.
Great. Okay, and that's just those 2 for this year?
Just those 2 shelters for this year.
Okay, thank you. Seems to take us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else? So now I'll move committee of the whole be adjourned. Those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.